Përshëndetje and welcome to Inside Albania with me, Alice Taylor. This week I'm joined by two very different guests. The first guest is Deputy Interior Minister Romina Kuko. We're going to be talking about the police in Albania, whether Albania really is a safe country and what improvements have been made and need to be made within the police force. I'm then joined by the Angry Albanian. For those of you that have Instagram or TikTok, you've probably come across his hilarious reels which poke fun at the stereotypes of Albania and Albanian men. His real name, Endrit Zechiri, and he's joining me online from London today. Romina, welcome to Inside Albania. Thank you for taking the time to join me today.
Thank you for the invitation, Alice.
Now, there's a lot of things I want to talk about today, but I want to focus a lot on safety in Albania, public safety. This is something which I'm quite passionate about in the way that when I came to Albania, I felt safe here straight away. And that was quite a surprise because, you know, outside of Albania, you hear things, oh, is it safe or it's dangerous or there's a lot of crime there. And I remember when I said to my mum, I'm going on holiday to Albania, she was like, oh, be careful, you know. And then when I got here, it was just completely different. I instantly felt safe. And in fact, it's one of the reasons why I tried to stay here, why I decided to stay here. And then I get asked questions so many times online from people who are coming here on holiday or have to come here for work. And they're like, is it safe? Is it safe for a woman to come by herself, etc.? And I always say to them, you are probably safer in Albania, anywhere, than you are on the street where you live. And I say that with confidence. You know, I've been all over Europe. I've lived in 3 different countries in Europe. And I don't think there's anywhere in this country where I wouldn't walk by myself any time of day or night. I also saw actually today some comments from tourists in a tourism group, and they were like, there's so many police everywhere, you know, on the roads and in the cities, but not in a negative way. They were like, it's reassuring, you know, to have that sort of presence around. So I guess that's kudos to you and the work that the government does. I also found some statistics that 82% of Albanians feel safe walking in their own neighborhood. And I think that number is really, really, really high. And it seems to be getting higher. It increased from 78% in 2022. And my point is, how did we get to this situation where Albania appears to be, in terms of petty crime on the streets, safer than many other places in Europe?
Well, you are one of the many expats who tell me this, because everybody that comes to work in Albania or as a tourist, the first concern about the country is safety. And we know that our country went through a very difficult transition, meaning that even the perception that existed about Albania was a little bit difficult. Mm-hmm. I can say that in the last years, this perception has changed. I can notice that tourists are much more assertive into coming to Albania without asking too many questions about safety. But as you say, this was the result of a very strategic work done by the Albanian government back into 2013 and then moving onwards. Prime Minister Rama back in the day said that one of the goals, strategic goals, is to transform the Albanian state police into a European service. So police was not considered more as a force, as usually it is in post-communist countries, but as a service to the citizens. And one of the strategies we employed was community policing, which actually is a British model, because the experts who worked for that were British experts back in the day. The idea was to create the sense of the community and safety so that every citizen feels that has a role to play into the safety of the community, of the country. This was very much combined with the police reform, you know, a lot of renewing the structure of the police, the standard operational procedures, the new laws that were being implemented, the technology employed into offering safety to citizens. So the combination of this factor brought us this big improvement, I can say. In 2013, people were not that keen to say that the country is so much safe. If I'm not mistaken, because the figures that you have are from the same survey that we ran from 2013 to these days. It's a Swedish government survey, and the numbers were something around 50, 55, 56. Today we are at 82%, and the trajectory is increasing, meaning that people really own the country in the sense of safety. So it's a combination of reform done by the government and the police, but also, let's say, the embracement of the cultural change that we try to introduce through these reforms.
So when you say community policing, can you expand a bit on that for the audience? Like what role has this played?
Sure. I mean, you know that sometimes in our countries, in, you know, the post-communist Eastern European countries, police was considered and perceived as a repressive force, meaning that it was a force out there to impose to the citizens a certain way of being, of behaving, of respecting the laws and so forth. Meaning that every citizen didn't have a role to play into the community. But we know that safety, it's not just a matter of the police, but it's a matter of everybody. First of all, of the neighborhoods, of the behavior of how people behave at the end of the day, of other factors like society, schools, health system, and so forth. So we try to expand now the safety as, let's say, an asset that doesn't belong exclusively to the police, but each and one of us has a role to play into the safety. So what we did was we created some structures called local safety councils in the municipalities, in which everybody who is a stakeholder on the ground level sits around the table, and they have a role to play. Meaning, I'm giving you a very simple example. If a road without lighting is something that breeds criminality, because you know that sometimes these difficult spots in the city create the conditions for criminal activity, then it's the role of the municipality to put the lights on in order to eliminate the root factor of that kind of element. If we have delinquency phenomena in schools, the early warning belongs to the school and to the pedagogical staff. So this is what we try to do, devolving the police, let's say, responsibility to all the stakeholders. And in these local safety councils, we used to invite also parents, and we used to invite religious communities, and sometimes even civil society organizations, so that everybody has a voice. And this created the echo chamber of security that everybody has, as I said, a role to play. So this gave actually the very good results.
I think as well, you know, in my area, for example, the police are very visible. They're always around, again, not in like a threatening way, but I don't know if he's like the boss or one of the senior ones. He walks around, he says good morning to everybody, he talks to people, he is approachable, he's friendly. Most of them speak some English as well, you know, especially as you have foreigners living more and more in Tirana. You know, they're not this sort of, they're there and you can't interact with them. If you're worried, if you have a concern, if you have questions, they will talk to you, and they're generally quite nice. And that is a bit different from some other places I've lived in, you know, as well. I think that makes people feel a bit more comfortable. You know, if you can approach someone, or you know the officers in your area are like reasonable people and that you can talk to them if you're concerned about something, I think that makes a difference as well. And that's changed. It hasn't always been like that in my experience.
It hasn't, because we created in these 8 years what we call the police zones. So every little unit in Albania, the gjate, as we call the administrative unit, the neighborhoods, have one responsible person who is responsible for that area in terms of safety. And we have the general patrol, and we have the community policing officers, and also the criminal police, which prevents crime, stationed in one area, meaning that these people are not scattered around the city, but they are responsible for the area. They know very well the grievances of that particular area. They know the hotspots when it comes to domestic violence, flagged families, which means that this creates also a know-how and an institutional memory on how we provide safety in a very structured way. But we have to be very careful in that, because of course they are there, but they are not there to show a repressive side, but just to be there as an open door, so that the person, the citizen, doesn't need to go to the commissariat door, but they have one primary interlocutor, which is a human being, a professional of the police force.
A friendly face.
A friendly face, absolutely.
But in those statistics as well, like, there were discrepancies, like in Siguria, for example, people didn't feel as safe, you know, and I wonder, why is that? Do you think, is that something to do with resources there, or a mentality, or what's being done to sort of level it out across the whole country? But I wonder as well, I mean, obviously the work that the police are doing, the ministry is doing, but is it cultural as well? Especially when it comes to, for example, tourists, you know, because there is that respect that you have for the guests, and it's a huge dishonor to do anything to harm a guest. Does this maybe contribute to this feeling of safety as well? But is there some cultural thing for the numbers being so low, do you think?
It is, but it's also exalted by the obsession that we have now with the touristical, let's say, development of Albania. We understand that the Albanian government, the Prime Minister, is very much aware that tourism is one of the strategic sectors of the Albanian economy. In order for tourism to flourish, the first and foremost condition is security and safety, because nobody will come here to, you know, explore the country if they don't feel safe. So, of course, it's a cultural thing. Albanians are very friendly, and especially with foreigners and tourists, you know very well. They open the doors wide open and they can offer you any help. I was joking with a friend of mine that visited, he's from New Zealand, and I said, I bet that you can travel all throughout the country without paying any money. If you ask people to help you, to give you a ride, or to, you know, to host you at home. Of course, he didn't do that, but he was very much impressed by the way that he was received by people. So it's a cultural thing, but it's also exalted in the way that people have the condition to be generous and to offer that. And when they have the conditions to do that, of course, that they are so generous. It's really important to understand that the Albanian businesses, especially on tourism, are not anymore on a survival mode. We have gone past through that.
But like, tourism brings its own challenges as well. You know, if you're going to have 11, 12 million tourists coming from abroad, like I lived in Malta before I lived here, and I would see how groups of young, drunk tourists, whether they're from Sweden or the UK or wherever, you know, any country, they come, a group of guys or a group of girls, and they get into fights. Someone picks up a bottle, or sexual assault, you know, when there's alcohol involved, and fights in the street, mainly sort of violent crimes. It used to happen quite a lot, especially in the areas where there was nightclubs and drinking establishments and things like that. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, with all those tourists comes risk as well, that people are going to commit various crimes. How does the government plan to keep tourists safe, but also keep Albania safe from tourists?
Yeah, I understand your point, and this is something that's happening actually in places where tourism has become now a burden rather than a development site. So far, they do behave because they are still exploring the country. However, I think that Albania will not be for a long time, as we say, a destination in which you can have the cheapest tourism ever. So it's going to create the conditions for the middle class, nice tourism combined with the archaeological, the cultural experience, rather than just backpacking, going get wasted somewhere and then you know,
students
trying to
trips. And...
Of course, I mean they are very much welcomed here, but it's going to be more of a kind of middle to higher class kind of tourism rather than just a daily one, and we're working on that direction, because quality is much more important than quantity, and sometimes the tourists which are on a certain level are equal to 10 backpackers that visit the country. However, I think that this will be, you know, a long time. And on the other hand, we want to have backpackers in the country to explore the mountains and to explore the great nature that we have. Albania has a Mediterranean climate, being in the east of Mediterranean, but also has a continental climate with the Alps. It's a country that has Alps. I mean, it's wonderful. It has 7 rivers. It has numerous lakes. So. And it's a country which was part of the Roman Empire, and of course it has a lot of cultural sites to see. So let's combine it and let's be optimistic that they will behave in the country.
But I guess, are there any additional measures foreseen in terms of additional police forces or centres or something in touristic areas, you know, especially, for example, having officers that speak English or Italian, for example, who can, you know, because when you're having thousands of people who are coming at once, you need more people on site to kind of...
Of course. Well, on the Italian, everybody speaks Italian in Albania still. On the English, of course, that police now, it's a renewed force. The mean age of the police has been, you know, lowered, meaning that now the new generation, the young generation speaks English. And whoever is deployed into the touristical areas, you know, that every year Albania State Police opens new police stations exclusively for the areas in which there are touristical sites, which otherwise during the year are not necessary because the population is so low. So people who are selected to go and serve there, one of the conditions is to know English. But there is a debate here whether we have to have police presence on the territory or we have to have systems in place which offer safety. Sometimes people, when they see a police figure, they perceive that there is something that needs to be sorted out, meaning that it's good to have police being present in the territory, but not too much visible, because these are otherwise
want to scare people.
Would disrupt a little bit the experience of tourists. And this is why now we have the fantastic project called Smart City, which will digitalize the way that the territory is observed, of course, by respecting all the human rights aspects of it. And of course, we are using technology on the streets regarding the road traffic, because we know that the road traffic is one of the main...
This is the main... If you take road traffic incidents out of the statistics, like, I mean, they're the main incident that people are suffering from.
So now with the intelligent cars that we have on detecting any kind of issues on the road, it's easier to tackle them, and it's easier to, you know, to address them without having the human negotiation component on it. So we're pondering much more on technology now rather than on the human, let's say, element of the...
Actually, I want to go off script a minute and talk about something to do with road safety. And I'm wondering how we can do something about this. Child safety in cars. Children sitting on the parents' laps in the front seat.
We have big fines about that.
Children not wearing seatbelts, children not having car seats, children... I was coming back from Dores the other day and I had 2 cars in front of me where the kid was out the window like this, you know, waving out the window, you know, and I just, you know, people say, oh, maybe they can't afford a car seat. If you can afford a car and fuel, you can afford a car seat for your kid, and having them on the front. But, you know, I say to people sometimes, and they're like, oh, no, it's fine. But I remember at school as a kid, we had lessons in our class as children about how to put on a seatbelt, how to fix it, why you had to do it. And it was just sort of, it was on TV, there were adverts, you know, with like simulated crashes and stuff. It was really drummed into us. People seem to not really understand how dangerous it is here. Please, let's do something about it.
They're learning that. I'm giving you a counterexample on that, on the seatbelt and the red lights on the streets. In 2013, this was, let's say, a chore for the drivers, because they consider the seatbelt to be, you know, something that they shouldn't uncomfortable. There were even funny story. There were even some T-shirts sold which were white, and they had a black stripe here so that they could simulate the. Well, it's you know, trying to cheat the system, and it was the same on the red lights, because maybe the police didn't have the actual authority, and the law didn't allow for big fines to be you know, administered. But we discovered that it's not about very large fines. It's about consistency on the police to actually punish these behaviors. It's like a classical conditioning, punish and reward. Meaning that when we changed the law and everything, you know, the reform was made in the police force, one of the main, let's say, I'm saying again, obsessions was to be ruthless when it comes to the drivers who do not put the seatbelt on, or who do not respect the red lights and the white stripes on the street. So now we have dramatically a decrease of these phenomena. Everybody now has an automatic behavior to put a seat belt and to respect the red lights. And it's the same with the kids. It's the same. We introduced the legislation about the seats on the cars, never allowing them to sit on the front, on the lap of the mother. We know that. It's cultural because people do not really understand the danger, and sometimes distances are really short.
I show them videos of like simulated dummies, and I say, you're sitting your 3-year-old in the front seat. This is what happens if the airbag deploys, and they're like, and I'm like, it's not just for nothing.
Still, the figures have decreased. Of course, there is going to be consistency. We are doing training on schools now in middle schools with the different projects that we have from a Swedish project on community policing and also some other European projects. So we're getting there.
Now, I've seen as well in the figures that the perception of the work that the police do is better as well. Not just the trust, but they perceive it as being less corrupt, and the police officers being more efficient and more independent and things like this. There's still work to be done there. Like, how has it been trying to root out corruption within the police force? It's not an easy job, but also to restore the trust of people who, even still, I still talk to some people that say, oh, well, they're all corrupt, they're thieving. And it's not true. It's just stuck in their mind, But how has this been? So fixing the problem of corruption, which does go on in every police force in the world, I may say, but also rebuilding the trust of the public at the same time.
Well, the people actually, there is an interesting finding in the statistic because people say they never encountered, let's say, a case with the police, never had something to do with them. But meanwhile, they can give ideas and perceptions about the police. Meaning that if you know for sure that a police officer is corrupt, you have to have your own primary experience about that. And we know that this is a criminal, offense. So when saying that police are corrupt, it's something really, to my own opinion, there is nothing worse in this world than a police officer being corrupt, because he is the one entitled by the law, by the society, by the government, by the mentality of the people to offer security. So this is one of the main breaches that somebody can actually do. The way that people now think about police is that they perceive less bribery taking from the police, and this is actually true. It is as a result of a different combination of factors. First of all, the police now is professionalized, meaning that back in the days, during the very difficult transition of the country, unfortunately, some people who didn't have the actual education or the background became police officers. They wore the uniform and started to offer security to the people. They were loyalists to a certain government, and this, of course, corrupts the system because then they can use the flag of a certain government or the party as a protection, and meanwhile they don't have the actual minimal knowledge on how to offer security to the citizens, let alone recognizing the law. So this has changed dramatically time after time, because now everybody that adheres to the police force should go through the academy, the police academy. They make a lot of tests. There is also there are some tests being done on the polygraph on certain positions. And also there is a very tough check and balance mechanism in place, meaning that if police doesn't perform, we have an agency called the Agency of the Police Oversight, which actually checks into the work and the quality of the work of the police.
Since 2013, you've gone in and I think it's fair to say, completely disrupted this system, this old guard, as we would say in English.
That's the word, disruption.
Yeah, you've disrupted, and I mean that in a positive way, this old guard, this old system, this old mentality. You've introduced structures and systems and standards which draw on the United Kingdom, for example, and other best practices. It's not like you've just made it up. And while I think everyone can say there's room for improvement, there always is. Things have changed, but I'm wondering, how tough was that to go into an institution, a network of people mainly guys of a certain age who are a bit sort of, I think we can say some of them were sort of a bit sort of macho. I mean, and to go and change the whole system of doing things from the inside out, that's got to be quite tough. Did you receive pushback? Was it hard, like, to undertake these kind of reforms? I mean, on like a personal level with people.
Well, listen, this is, this was the determination of the government to exactly disrupt this way, just like there was a disruption on the justice system with the justice reform, just as it was a disruption on the territorial reform by creating that huge reform into assembling 383 local units into 61. That was a huge reform. But it's the only way that you can do that, because otherwise, through gradual change, nothing would be possible. And this was the advice that we got also from international partners. That is, if we want to introduce a new reform, you should look at it with new eyes and be brave enough to introduce that. I don't know if you remember the vetting in the police force, which was very radical. Reform introduced in which every police officer would go through a vetting system on 3 pillars. They should justify their wealth, they should justify their course of work, whether they are effective or not, and their knowledge and their integrity. So this created a really great upheaval into the organization. But let's say make it as a kind of comparison as an antibiotic. When you introduce a certain antibiotic to an organism, of course, that those who are the most vulnerable will try to be shaken and to get out of the system.
The ones who protest the most are the ones who...
Well, of course, because otherwise, if you are a honest police officer that offers, you are, that's the opposite. You want this reform to happen so that the meritocracy tries to be part of the police organization. So there was a lot of resistance, but I think that it was worthy to do that kind of reform. Of course, that the reform is ongoing now.
And what are the biggest challenges you have? Like, what are the main issues, pain points that you wish you could solve sort of immediately within the police force, within Albanian society? What do you think are the most pressing things that need to be fixed?
Well, I think that the road traffic is one of the main challenges that needs to be fixed. And of course, with the introduction of technology, this is something that it's giving its results, but still there is a lot of work to be done. Even though from the statistics, there is a dramatic decrease on the victims of the traffic accidents. Of course, that every victim is a tragedy. I'm not saying that people are statistics, not at all. But it's important that we try to decrease that even further. The other challenge, I think, that we are very much focused now has to do with community safety on the gender-based violence and protection of minors. So, of course, that the cases have been reported more and more each year, meaning that there is a lot of more trust to the police, but this is a work that cannot be let only in the good hands of women police officers. This requires social workers, and this requires all the other agencies to deal with that. So I think that this is one of the main chunks of work that needs to be standardized even further. And I think that when it comes to the school safety, we have a lot to do. But with the smart cities on one hand, and with a project on having cameras inside the classrooms, on the other hand, this is, of course, one of the topics. And last but not least, quite the opposite, which is the first, has to do with cybercrime.
Yes.
And with the cyberbullying, which is an issue that we don't talk too much in the country. And I believe that we need to start a really very serious national debate on how we behave online and what kind of measures we do need to have in place without disrupting the freedom of speech, but of course by disrupting the, let's say, the bullying and everything that happens in the online realm.
Yeah, domestic violence is one, and the online the behavior in the online sector is another, because, I mean, as a mum, I'm terrified. I mean, my daughter doesn't have any access and won't to social media and things. But, you know, when she gets older, it's scary because you see what goes on online. And, you know, I have friends, colleagues who've been stalked, harassed, everything, you know, and it's terrifying. It's a whole new world that exists just online, but unfortunately does spill over into real life. Now, I have to be careful of the time, but my last question, I heard that you are going to be introducing some kind of voluntary policing system. Was that correct?
Oh, it's, well, this was a decision taken back in 2019, actually. And it was after the earthquake, the big earthquake that was devastating for Albania. Back in the days, the idea was that we didn't have any kind of voluntary people on the ground to go and knock in the doors of the elderly who were alone at their houses, or people who needed help. So it was a kind of voluntary, like it exists in the European countries, in which parents, for example, take a responsibility that a day in the week accompany the kids to go to the school, or some voluntary people on the ground regarding neighborhood watches.
Yes.
So it doesn't need, I've heard the debates and I've heard the criticism. It was nothing like observing the society, not at all. This was just people who can actually offer safety to the community, much more on firefighting and on a civil emergency element, rather than on the public order and security. So this I want to clarify.
I think they reacted badly because of the past, you know, that when during communism there were people who spied the whole neighborhood and things like that. But actually this concept is so common in the UK,
Absolutely.
for example. You know, you have dedicated people in your apartment block, on your street, community groups, like neighborhood watch, voluntary police officers, or like, I can't remember what we called them, but yeah, they're not proper police, but they work with the police in the community and things, you know, so it's a tried and tested.
I mean, we have administrators of our neighborhoods.
Yes.
So every group of buildings has one administrator who takes care of, you know, all these nitty-gritty elements of the neighborhood, the flowers and the street and the lights and, you know, the water supply and everything else. So we didn't have a person to take care when something happens, when there is a big fire, or when there is an earthquake in which certain steps should be taken. So this was the reason why that decision was taken back in the days regarding the voluntary police. But then COVID happened and, you know, it was a little bit left dormant. So, but there is nothing to do with observing the society, not at all. I mean,
I support the idea.
We're far away and long gone from that concept.
Yes.
Now we're talking about community safety. So that's the contrary, the opposite of what we...
It brings the community closer rather than, And I've lived this myself in the UK. It's a system that works. Romina, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alice.
Thanks.
Pleasure.
Andrew, welcome to Inside Albania. I feel like I know you really well just from seeing you on Instagram, and it's quite surreal hearing your voice. I'm kind of expecting you to start swearing in Albanian at any moment. Please don't. Welcome to my show.
I won't swear. Hi, Alice. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Good to meet you, finally.
Yes. Now, as I said, I've been following your reels for a long time. You know, I find them hilarious. They do trigger a bit of post-traumatic stress sometimes, I think, though, some of the characters in them. And like I said, I feel like I know the character pretty well. But who are you? Who is Andrew? Where are you from? How did you end up in the UK? Let's start there.
Wow. We start off quite heavy with the philosophy. Who am I? And what do I stand for?
Go as deep as you want to.
I guess. Okay, we'll start from the beginning.
Yes.
I'm born in Tropoja in 1993, and we lived pretty much there for 6 years. Obviously, as you understand, the war and all that kind of stuff happened, made things quite complicated. We took on some refugees at the time. I actually have some vivid memories of that time period. You know, there was aircraft flying overhead, so it was quite surreal. My dad at the time was a translator for the BBC. As you can imagine, there was no Google Translate then. So he was a French teacher, so he was actually working for the BBC speaking in French. His English wasn't as good at the time. And yeah, he made some connections, and we managed to, you know, get the whole family here in 99. My mum was 8 months pregnant with my brother, who was then born here. Wow. My sister was 2. My grandma was there with us. So yeah, it was a massive change. But I think a positive one in the sense that obviously we've had the opportunity to grow up in a place that's a bit more prosperous. The education system is better. I don't know if that's still the case now, to be honest. It's the UK is coming down a bit, but yeah, that's kind of, we came here in 99 and we've been here ever since.
And you live in London?
I live in Epsom, so that's technically white suburbia, Surrey. So just outside. And
how do you feel British? Do you still feel Albanian? Do you feel connected to your roots in any way? I mean, outside of the character,
Obviously, you can tell from the way that I speak English, I'm quite Anglicized, would probably be the way to describe it. But that's just the accent. Obviously, my entire family is here. I feel very much Albanian. If people ask me, where are you from? I say Albania straight away without hesitating. I speak Albanian fluently. It's just in the dialect of what we say, Tropojan, or Malok, whichever one you prefer. I don't take any offense when people call me Malok because I'm literally from the mountains, which makes me a Malok, whatever.
Yes, by definition.
Exactly.
It's funny you say about the Tropojan dialect. Like, I thought I understood Albanian quite well. Like, a few years ago, the first time I went to Tropoja, I was like, I've got a basic grasp of the language, and I went there and started trying to talk. And then people would speak to me in Tropojan dialect. And I was like, oh, what on earth are you saying? Like, I didn't have a clue. Now, though, I'm a bit better. I can understand. I actually prefer the dialects from the north of Albania, but it's not easy. Do you speak Albanian at home still with your family, or?
So I speak, I would say, Albisht, which is like a combination of both English and Albanian, depending on obviously who I'm speaking to. So with my dad, it's like a 60-40 Albanian English mix.
Interesting.
So he might speak entirely Albanian to me and I might reply entirely in English to him. And we both obviously understand each other. Whereas obviously with some of my older family members, Nana Mira, rest in peace, she passed a few years ago. She didn't learn English. Obviously, she was old when we came here. So I had to speak Albanian with her. So she's kind of the main reason I still speak Albanian. But I spoke it like quite fluently to a level where a lot of, some of my peers or people who are younger who are born here, they kind of understand, but they don't speak as well.
Yeah, I meet a lot of people that come back to Albania from the diaspora for holidays and things, and like their kids, for example, don't speak any Albanian. But it's quite funny. My daughter, we speak English at home, but you called it Albish. I quite like this because I try and speak to her in just English, but there are some words that we just say in Albanian, like kopshti. I forget the word kindergarten or preschool or whatever. Kastravets, I always forget the word cucumber, So we speak this kind of weird dialect as well.
Kastravets is a beautiful word. It's one of my favorites. It just flows off the tongue really nice. It really is.
Now, what was your inspiration for your character, the angry Albanian? Where did this come from? Is this a reflection of like a part of your character, or is it people around you? Is it a caricature? Like, how did this come about?
It's definitely a caricature. Obviously, I take inspiration from, cousins and uncles and all that kind of stuff, but it's always to the extreme. It's never really someone that it's not a person that I'm playing. But if I'm perfectly honest, this has kind of been a natural progression of sort of my sense of humor. So I grew up on early days, it was like Jim Carrey and quite slapstick and that kind of stuff. And as I got a little bit older, and I say a little bit older, like we're talking now, 14, 15, 16, I was really into the Ali G show. And the character of Borat especially, and that really got me into satire. And I don't know if you've seen, it was one of my videos, other people have posted it as well, so I won't take credit for it, but the character of Borat was originally Albanian, Christo the Albanian reporter. And supposedly, I don't know if this is true, but Sacha Baron Cohen was threatened by Albanians sometime in '98. Like, hey, you can't mock us this way. So he changed it to a Kazakhstani, somewhere really obscure like Kazakhstan. And then obviously the movie itself was filmed in like a village in Romania. So it was supposed to be Albanian. It was filmed in Romania and he was Kazakhstani. So it was a mix of just general Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, whatever it is.
I didn't know that maybe
that was
he'd
a
been
bit threatened. Well, I don't know if it's true, but it's just what I've heard. And you can't discount it.
Doesn't sound that unlikely, does it?
Yeah.
But like, do you get any negative comments from people about what you're doing? Because like you said, they go to the extreme. Some of they're hilarious, but they do pick on quite negative traits, particularly among men. Well, just men, because that's the character you play. But like, do you get people saying negative things? Do you have threats? Do you have any really bad, like, have you had problems because of the character you play?
Internet warriors are going to threaten you all of the time. It's just you kind of just have to ignore it. But I think it takes a certain like level of, I was going to say intellect, maybe that sounds too
Say it. It's fine.
pompous. But yeah, like if you don't have the type of sense of humor that I have, and lots of people have a dark sense of humor, it's not saying it's unique to me or anything. Like I said, I've had in my inspirations as well. If you don't like or understand satire, you're not going to understand the character that I'm playing. People think that I've had tons of mostly Albanian men saying, you're making us look bad, you're putting us in a bad light, no one's going to want to date us because of this, you know, you just want to date us and all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, that's not actually the case. What I'm doing is I'm mocking these guys. I'm mocking the guys and these guys are the bad guys at the end of the day. Like we have, the majority of Albanian men aren't like that. And I think most sane people understand that the majority aren't like that. But it's the minority that you have to make fun of. You know, and that's it's not like it's not like I'm punching down, I'm not picking on an ethnic minority. I suppose we are in a way in the UK. But it's, if you can't make fun of the bad guys, like what exactly is humor here? Like, what are we supposed to do? So if it's not for you, that's fine. But I guess, you know, you're making us look bad. It's like, it's not me. I've got a degree. I pay my taxes. I'm not. You know, all of my siblings have gone to uni. Like, I've never been arrested I've never been pulled over. So I don't know if it's me that's making us look bad. I think it's some of the others that are doing it, and I'm trying to be honest, to that situation.
If I would put money on the people that are contacting you saying, oh, you're making us look bad, are the ones that are doing this kind of thing, or like, you know, they see themselves in your character and they feel personally attacked and victimized, and they're like, oh my God, you know, the secret's going to get out, you know? I would hazard a guess.
Perhaps.
I get
what I don't understand is it's not a secret. It's like people know about this. You know, it's a stereotype, and I'm playing on that. You know, so,
I get some incredibly stupid comments. You know, like I use satire as well when in some of my reels, and I did one recently about someone had asked a question: is it safe to arrive at 3 a.m? And I was like, no, because that's when the Kulshedra comes out. You know, and I had people messaging me like, well, that's not true. I can't believe you're saying that. You're giving Albania a bad reputation. And I'm like, what, you mean the Kulshedra is not a real creature? Like, are you kidding? Like, people don't understand that I'm obviously joking. If I'm talking about a mythical creature that comes out at 3 a.m. and eats tourists, like, you know, it just goes completely over their head, you know? So I get some really bizarre comments.
Some people just don't get it. And the interesting thing is, even when I've done like content that's like, how could you say that this is negative? It was Albanian Independence Day in November last year, and me and some of my friends, we had a massive project. You may have seen some of these videos, but a massive projector, and we went to central London, and we put the Albanian flag on Big Ben. And it wasn't antagonizing anyone. You know, the police were there watching us, and they were fine, but they let us do it for like 40 minutes. So they didn't care. And it was we're very peaceful. You know, we weren't being rambunctious and swearing at anyone. We were literally just there celebrating Albanian Independence Day. And then so I uploaded that. That went, you know, semi-viral. A bunch of people saying, why are you posting fake content? It's AI. What if you're so proud to be Albanian? Why are you in London? Why aren't you in Tirana? All this kind of stuff. Bro, I'm just trying to celebrate Albanian Independence Day. So even when I'm posting positive content, so it's like, the point I'm trying to make is, no matter what content you make, there will be someone who dislikes you. They don't like the shape of your nose, whatever it is. They'll put something negative because they've got nothing else to do. And it's a reflection of how they feel inside usually.
So you don't let it impact you.
No, absolutely not. And I'm kind of seasoned to this because I should have probably mentioned this in some of the upbringing part, but I studied drama pretty much throughout all of school, GCSE, A-level, and then I did a degree in it. So technically that makes me a failed actor. So the theatrical and, you know, getting into character and reading from scripts and, you know, just becoming almost a different person entirely, which, you know, I'm not like, as you can see, as how I'm talking today, I'm not like the character, the angry Albanian.
You haven't sworn once,
all of that is part. Yes, so far.
No, you definitely have to have this sort of thick skin when you start posting online, because you have to, you know, at first when I started getting comments, and like 90% are positive, but you do get really mean people and you get threats, and you have to really quickly understand that you can't take it personally. These people don't know you, they're not your friends, they're not your family, they don't have a clue about your life story or anything, and they're just being idiots basically on the internet, and you have to put this barrier there and let it, you know, there's no point arguing them. Sometimes when I've had particularly I don't know, insults or messages that have really got to me, I just kill them with kindness. And I'm like, well, would you like to meet for a coffee to discuss it? You know, perhaps we can hash out our differences. And actually, sometimes it's worked. And they've been like, oh. And then I got a message a few days later from this one person. He was like, I just reflected on what you said. I think I called him an angry little man. He was like, I reflected, and actually you're right. And it's really impacting my life, the way I'm attacking people online. I was like, this is getting too deep, you know? But yeah, you have to kill them with kindness or just ignore them sometimes.
Alice, you're a much better person than I am, because I kill them with sarcastic comments and one-upping their.
Oh, I do that as well. You've got to get a balance.
To be honest,
right?
mostly, for sure, but mostly I do just ignore them these days. But if there's one where, like, you know, okay, this guy's an idiot, I just have to, you know,
rip into him.
Look at the shape of your head, bro.
We actually played this game at airports, you know, spot the Albanian guy. I'm sure you can imagine what the criteria is. Would you like to guess?
Are you now? Yes. It's you can tell an Albanian from the back of the head. Can you tell that now as well, having lived in?
Absolutely. Yeah. Carry on.
How long have you been in Albania?
8 years.
I don't know your story.
Yeah. I've been here for 8 years. I came on holiday for 3 days and I stayed. That was 8 years ago now. I'm now an Albanian citizen as well. I can spot an Albanian guy in an airport, in a street, whatever, normally from the back of the head, but also sometimes the clothing, the certain way of dressing. And I can also facially, and this is not an insult at all, but like people from certain areas of the north of Albania, there's a bone structure, which is quite common, and I can sort of identify that. I can also tell the difference between accents in the north as well. So like Peshkopi and leisure, for example. So I'm getting it down to quite a fine art.
We're generally a bit taller in the north as well. I absolutely lucked out because my dad's 5'5", and I just about scraped below 5'11". So
well, I'm 6'2".
I'm really lucky.
So I fit in Tropoja.
You're 6'2".
Yeah. The last time I went there, I met 2 girls from Tropoja who were taller than me. It was the first time.
I don't know what they're feeding people in the. I don't know what they're feeding people, but yeah. Are you like a Swede? Are you you sound like you're an English aristocrat.
Yeah, no, I'm Welsh. Well, half Welsh. I was born in Cornwall. My mum's from Manchester, but no, I'm just a giant. All my family are giants as well. Like all the women are like over 6 foot.
Enough.
So imagine here, like in Tirana, you know, a lot of the people from the south are quite a lot shorter than me. So, I mean, there was a woman in the supermarket the other day asking me to take stuff off the shelf for her. I'm happy to be of service, you know, so... I wanted to ask as well, so I've been on BBC quite a few times over the last few years arguing with them about the negative sort of stereotypes that have been portrayed and the horrible rhetoric that's been used against Albanians in the UK to do with the migrant crossings and things, and a lot of it coming from the government itself, which honestly made me quite ashamed to be British. And I'm wondering what your experience, particularly like 2002, 2003, early 2004, when there was a lot of hate towards Albanians in British media, like, did that impact you in any way? Did it affect your life in any way? How did you sort of navigate that?
You know what? In those sort of times, obviously I was significantly younger. I was, in 2002, I was 9 years old. So
2022,
it's harder to be sort of...
recently, like when they had all the boat crossings.
2002.
Sorry.
Right, sorry, yeah, the boat crossings... yeah, I mean, all of that is the government has allowed that to happen. Okay, the government are in control of the seas. They could pull people over immediately. So are the French. We're in coalition with the French. It's not like they're some totally foreign entity. They've got trade deals and they've got border deals and they've got all this kind of stuff. If they wanted to stop them, they would do them straight away. I think this has purposely been allowed to happen in order to sort of, I guess. It's an old tactic where you let the lower classes fight amongst each other whilst the rich keep getting away with their tax evasions and their Epstein lists and all this kind of stuff. They're getting away with the actual crimes, whereas people are like, oh, these migrants are coming in and disrupting our way of life. And kind of they are, but it's like it's been allowed to happen. And I don't blame any of the Albanians who are going there in a boat, because some of the conditions, especially if you're from poorer areas of Albania, you can either live on 400 or 500 euros a month, or you can get yourself to London and make some real money and send money back home, which is what people do. I probably would have done the same, if I'm perfectly honest. I probably would have done the same. It's the same with, if you look at the situation in South America, they're living in abject poverty, some people. There's all kinds of blood feuds going on, and people are walking across the border to get to America for a better life, and it's the same sort of thing. Obviously, we're taking a boat and they're walking, but the principle, I would do it if I was in their situation. I would probably do the same.
No, I think it was definitely...
I can't be a hypocrite and blame them.
It was weaponized for political gain. You know, the government, they pick I remember when I lived in the UK many years ago, and they were saying the same things about Polish people, Bulgarian people, Romanian people. And I tried explaining that to people here. I said, it's not about you guys. You know, you're just a scapegoat for the moment. Now, there's something else I want to ask you. I found some statistics recently that Albanian men are more likely to cheat. 60% have cheated, 63% say it's normal, and 70% said that if they cheat, their wife should tolerate it. Meanwhile, the EU average is 43%. What say you?
I think you need to stop reading studies from the University of Belgrade. Because this is clearly Serbian propaganda. I don't believe it.
Not Greek.
The real statistics... Sorry? Oh, Greeks, yeah, the Greeks. Let's not get started on the Greeks. But the stats, the real stats that like, if you want a real answer, the real stats that I've looked at, the cheating rates, it's men and women in modern day, it's 18% for women and 28% for men. So women are actually closing the gap. There's a wage gap, but now there's a cheating gap and they're closing that as well.
Ooh,
God bless you.
equality.
But what I'm trying to get at that is that it's the minority of all people. The majority of men don't cheat, Albanian, Serbian, Greek, or otherwise. The majority of men don't cheat simply because they don't have the opportunity to cheat. The average man is almost invisible to the average woman, to be honest. So in order for you to cheat, you need to have options to cheat with, you know, and an average man, especially an average man who's, you know, in his 18 to 25 sort of age, early 20s, you're kind of invisible to most women of that similar age. It's only until you start getting into your 30s and 40s when you've accrued some wealth and some status and you know, you just look better than a child, I suppose, where you start getting some opportunities. And yeah, so the average man, especially the average young man, just isn't cheating because they don't have one girl to cheat on. We're being perfectly honest. And then what also happens is there's a study where they found out a thing called the wedding ring effect, where essentially single women are actually more attracted to married men than they are to single men. So what's happening is the men who are actually in a relationship or married or whatever, they're more sought after because psychologically they think, well, if he's got this wife and she's, you know, really good looking, he must have something that he's bringing to the table. So let me try and find out. So it's I don't know. It's a forbidden fruit sort of thing. It's a psychological factor that works in that. And what happens is that if you're constantly going after these guys that are like, you know, they're really wealthy, they're really good looking, and they've got a lot going on in their lives, if those are the only the guys that you're giving a chance to, then those are the guys in the 28% that are doing all the cheating. So it makes you feel like, you know, as a woman, like, well, I've dated, you know, 5 men, 4 of them have cheated on me, therefore 80% or whatever the stat is are cheaters. Well, no, it's because you've gone after the same type of men. You looked at the men who are in that minority.
Aim lower.
To skew your perception. Yeah, well, kind of, or just, I don't know, maybe aim lower is wrong, but you know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah.
You know, if you start dating Johnny Depp, it's. I know Johnny Depp is probably not a good example, but you know, them type. Yeah, if you start dating Leo DiCaprio and you turn 25, you know it's going to. So that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and Albanian men don't cheat.
Absolutely not. It's scientifically proven.
Okay, and all Serbian propaganda.
Exactly.
Okay. My last question. I believe, just because I was looking through some of your more recent content before we did the interview, you have a girlfriend now, and I'm just wondering, or if she's not your girlfriend, lady friend, what does she think about the character you play? What does she think about your popularity? How does she feel about the whole thing? Hi,
Benny Zammer. So she's going to be watching this later. So she loves the character because that's how she found me. So we were like, recently, we're a new couple, so like 2 months, but I don't care. I'm blasting all my social media with her face. Good. I don't care. Like I'm not like the Albanian men don't cheat thing is actually, you know, it's tongue in cheek for me. It's an actual real thing. Never cheated on any girlfriend that bad. Regardless of that, yeah, she found me on TikTok and she just found it hilarious. And she commented on one of my videos, and she's actually got a bit of a following herself. She's got like 100K on TikTok or whatever. But obviously, you know, she does mostly like makeup content and it's stuff that's never going to come on my algorithm. So I'd never seen her. But until she commented, I was like, wow, this girl's amazing. So I followed her back, and then it's kind of been...
That was it?
Since there. That was it.
It makes it a bit easier if she's in that sort of online world as well, you know, because you both know how it works and things. I think if one is and one isn't, it can be a bit difficult sort of explaining, you know, just because someone comments doesn't mean I'm having an affair with them, that sort of thing. It can be difficult.
Well, if she doesn't find my sense of humor funny, then she's never going to be interested in ever meeting me. So, you know, they come hand in hand.
Last question, what's next? Do you have any exciting projects or plans, or, you know, what are you planning on doing with your work, your content?
I've got to plug my t-shirts at the minute, so Highzammer. So if you want to get one of these, it's highzammer.com. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that, but I've done it anyway.
It's fine.
Highzammer.com. I'm also working on a project with another one of my close friends where what we want to do is connect the Albanian community and diaspora wherever you are in London. If you're in Germany, if you're in Italy, we're working on an app that lets you find Albanian businesses immediately. So that's going to be launching later on this year. The working title right now is Albiz. And it's essentially like an overlay over Google Maps, and it will show you if you want to get a coffee that's Albanian owned, a mechanic that's Albanian owned. So all of that, it will let you.
Amazing.
And there'll be like a chat option. You can post for jobs. It's very early days, like I said, but Albiz, look out for it. That's going to be sort of the you know, forget all the jokes and all the satire and all kinds of, that's funny, but like, let's now do something
This is good. Like when I travel a lot for work, and I always like to know where I can get a decent coffee, i.e. owned by an Albanian. Yes. So this is really, really useful. I know if you want any tips for Brussels, I know quite a few places there. I'd be happy to give you some inside information.
I will definitely take you up on that.
Andrew, thank you so much for the interview, and I look forward to seeing what you do next. Thank you again.
Alice, thank you so much. Good to meet you again.
Mirar pafshim.
All the best. Bye.
That's all for this week. You can watch Inside Albania every Saturday on Euronews Albania at 4 o'clock, on our YouTube channel, Euronews Albania, or across all major podcasting platforms. Until next week, Mirar pafshim.